hard to respect it, I don't know when they are.
I'm just talking about maybe a date.
Yeah.
Phil.
Good morning, everybody. I do, sir. We'll get one of the documents, say it.
This is where she sits to take minutes. That's the minute chair.
Please, so I can.
You'd rather not though, right, Sabina?
I'll give her some room. This is good.
Turn off my agenda and everything.
Walk right out then.
So, I'm
Can totally advantage.
I'm in first place.
I saw that.
He didn't laugh.
Hey, Tim. Tim, the super dog.
Yeah.
What's up, Joe? Hey, everybody, how are you? Joe?
Close but no cigar.
It's impossible. I picked so many favorites.
Yes, sir.
And I picked 3 upsets. And all 3 of them were early April, Saturday.
Big
Sound
watching on TV.
All 3 of them.
In the comfort of your own
Till
home.
very end. All 7.
Yeah,
LSU
in
got
fact,
pick
we,
6
well,
to cover the
I think it's,
spread,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
All 3 of them.
Made that comment too.
The upsets went against me, and I was like, okay, well, I picked upsets. So I lost those and win all these favorites. I've won once this year already. It's impossible. These are 20-year-old kids.
Yeah, I was so confident. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to
Not happening.
USC.
Let's see, I don't remember exactly how you finished overall.
I was third.
I looked at that one day, she said you read the whole thing. I started
After I was
for
the
some
first
paragraphs,
one.
I'm not even printing that.
My first
I
one.
was thinking on my computer, if I did, I put that.
And we haven't.
Oh, I ended up
When I was
winning.
looking at bylaws, when I started looking at it, after you got four, the first
So I ended up tied for last, 9 points. So you ended up tied for second.
spreadsheets,
So
things
you
like that, were
you
not
had 3 of your
narrative.
service points, because you didn't get, just pure wins. You really got money, but you,
All the time I see.
I found a way to finish that one.
Actually, the tiebreaker is points, and then it goes to the,
I wasn't worried.
to the
Since you made
game.
company,
Who got the closest pick up the game, so Leland has more overall, continue, any of his key
I'm a little worried about where your tone is going.
So right there.
Interesting.
Yeah,
As good as he
14 out of
could.
14, but he was so far off, he went way off. He was, 22 points off on his, top.
I don't have that capability.
So, that's how I rolled out there. That's my worst position thus far. I only picked 7 of them. 24 games. I got 7 of them.
On the season, it's hard to
Michael Aiken.
You'd be amazed that if you finish 500 on the season, picking games, that's pretty good.
I ain't catching up because I'm doing just over 500.
Morning,
You're better at that.
10 o'clock. Welcome. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is approval of minutes for the meeting of September 6th and September 25th. You should all have copies of them. Any questions or changes?
I move to accept as written.
Second.
Any comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Lee, y'all been busy.
Yes, sir. Good morning. So ADA just hosted Oktoberfest this past weekend. It was a huge success, and we expect to see an influx percentage-wise of people and financial-wise as well. So ADA is finalizing details for our annual Christmas ornament. We expect to announce it the second week of November. Also, we have Main Street coming at the end of the month. The goals for this meeting is for me to be able to formally meet them and also introduce a few new initiatives to our members. Upcoming events, we have Fall Fest on October 28th. On November 17th, Holiday Open House and Pink Friday. November 25th is Small Business Saturday. December 3rd will be our downtown Christmas parade, December 7th, Night of 1,000 Lights, and December 14th, Ladies Night Out. Any questions?
If I can, I own buildings on the north side of Lawrence Street, and my tenants are, wondering if we can have some events up there. And I know Night of 1,000 Lights and all those things incorporate that part of Lawrence, but, let's put our heads together and see if we can, maybe a little entertainment somewhere. I mean, I have a lot that's not really exposed to Lawrence, but let's just keep that in mind to
Yes, sir.
try to keep that end of Lawrence Street in the mix.
Yes, sir, that's hopefully what we're gonna be able to, we've started to try to think of some ideas, because we've definitely heard that, so we wanna start implementing. So, of course, if anyone ever has any ideas or anything like that, please let us know. But any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before we get into the agenda, I want to thank all of you. We've had 3 or 4 meetings in the last month or 6 weeks. Most of you have been out there for all of them, so I want to express my personal appreciation for all the effort to come to these things, because we've been busy. It's not the business we've been in many years, so, thank you. Under old business, the first thing is Brian South. The executive committee met several weeks ago and just tried to discuss this somewhat in detail. Brian and Cynthia are here today. At that time, Tim O'Brien advised us that he had heard from the city engineer that there was a permit that was still missing. Tim, do you recall exactly what that was?
Yeah, and I confirmed this morning, Brian provided some email chains last night, but I did confirm that there's progress, but there's no approval or acceptance of their system, so really unchanged.
So Brian, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, sir. The email string did say from Thomas Parrott that he had no concerns with the plan. And Joe Yates had confirmed that he was in agreement with what's pending is lift station electrical. And they're waiting on that from the supply. But the city has adopted what has been presented. They do not issue approvals. I think essentially the engineer said, we got no issues with your plan. So I deem that to be their approval.
They would not agree.
What would?
I'm just telling you that they see progress, but it's not done. It's moving towards approval.
Did you see the email from Thomas Parrott?
I did, and that was, I understand that was a reaction to one aspect of the plan. It does show progress, but it's not complete.
We've done all we can do to get, what would you recommend that we need to do next if something's missing?
My understanding is that one thing that is outstanding, and I believe that the requirement was that the approval be in place, not that there be motion towards an approval being in place. Mike Przbalowicz told me 30 minutes ago that they're awaiting Ed Dudley to provide some additional information about the pump station. Then they will review that, but no approval has been granted, and certainly the work hasn't been completed or accepted.
When we say they, is it the city or is it DHEC, is it the state, who's they?
Well, both city and DHEC. The city would have to approve the work, and then it would have to be completed, and then DHEC has to inspect it, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many steps left.
Tim, when you say the work completed, you mean installed systems?
That would, in order for the city to accept it, it has to be installed and inspected.
But we can't install it until we get the funding and the approval to proceed with construction. So,
It's true.
we've essentially presented everything that they've asked of us. Our engineer, I will admit, has not been very speedy in his process, but we have agreed to the height of the fence around the, lift station. The electrical, so I'm kind of at a loss of what to do next if I do not have your approval to go forward. From what I gathered from engineering, they do not approve plans, they simply authorize a proceed to construct, but I could be wrong on that.
We kind of feel like we're caught in the middle, Brian. I mean, we've been in discussion with you for going on almost 3 years. And we're being told by city representatives that there's certain approvals and certain processes that are not done yet. So it kind of puts us, we want to be in a position to where the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed before we consider any sort of a loan to you. I don't think it's fair to ask us to move forward until we were being told by city representatives that there are things that are not completed. So this is something you need to work out with the city, and someone from the city needs to tell us everything is done and you're ready to go ahead. That's the way I look at it.
And to be absolutely clear, I'm just a middleman. I'm not, they're the regulators. And when Buzz and the chairman of the Aiken Corporation asked me, do they say it's done? And I called them and say, is it done? And they say, no. That's all I'm doing is carrying the message.
I wanna make sure, initially when we started talking about this years ago, we said we wanted the work done, okay? And I think there's been some either miscommunication about that, or we changed something. I just wanna make sure that we're saying, is the city approved everything? Has DHEC approved everything? Are we saying that we want it done? That's what he just said.
I think we just wanted it signed. We
The
wanted
approval.
To be able to proceed with the construction of it, correct?
But not physically in, right?
We can talk about that, potentially bringing it to the full board for a vote.
Yeah, so you're saying that they don't have the approval yet from the city?
They do not have
DHEC,
approval to
or whatever,
proceed.
because something that the engineer is supposed to do, right?
Correct.
So once it's stamped and approved, and I pay it, we're having a heck of a time getting building permits. I mean, 7 to 8 weeks on building permits because of staff and whatever, and we've been trying to hire people. But I just wanna be clear about what we're talking about. You said installed. You understand what the
That is
question?
the full DHEC approval in the state. We've discussed in the executive committee that was the original plan, correct? We've talked about it, if it were to be signed off, approved, that to proceed with the installation of the lift by the city and the state, then we would potentially look at doing it.
So,
Neither is true currently.
neither is true. The other reason, what you're saying, the biggest thing they do now is have the engineer give DHEC or the city, whatever, and have them.
Or us directly. I mean,
The city engineering department has not fired the gun. They have not loaded the gun. The gun is in the drawer.
We don't have approval, is what you're saying.
Correct.
I just wanted to be clear about what you had said
Right.
about installed, because there was a change. That's what we did to start with, okay? Okay.
Brian, is that,
I'm just kind of at a loss because, what I heard from, Joe Yates was that he was not the PE and that Tom Parrott was, and then Tom Parrott gave us an email saying that he had no concerns, with the plan. And that, they talked about the height of the fence around the lift and several different points, but, he was saying from the city's perspective, they had no concerns.
Specifically, what the answer to the question this morning, I asked that and they said that was about the fence, not the entirety of the project.
Not to include the electrical.
No,
Brian,
that's all I know.
having concerns is not approval, okay? I mean, if you know, you can get signals from the planning department, it looks like the building permit's all right, but you don't have a building permit signed yet, okay? You do not have an approval signed by whoever's supposed to do it. You have to get that. The engineer's gotta give them what they require, and it's gotta be signed. You can be, you know, they can tell you, you can hear, well, go ahead and do this, we're okay. Well, that ain't a signed approval when it comes to what the city requires or DHEC requires.
I would ask that we defer. Let me get the signed statement from city engineering and defer to the next meeting.
Well, you had no problem deferring, it ain't approved, so we're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, and I didn't share that with Mike, he just said it's not done.
Okay.
The lift station was a new,
Once you get everything, then the executive committee needs to meet and discuss this in more detail, and and that's gonna be before the next meeting. So just like, if you get this the day before the next meeting, we're still not gonna be ready to look at this.
Okay.
But we need some time. If you get it tomorrow, then maybe we will.
I would ask them, we submitted the package to Mason, and we thought it was all encompassing. Was just short of, I mean, we have a permit to construct from DHEC. We have an encroachment permit from DOT to encroach. So specifically, we want a signature from engineering saying plan approved.
Yeah, if that's what comes from city engineering, utilities department, I don't know exactly if it's a email saying approved versus signature on the plan. I
Or
mean,
notice to proceed.
yeah, whatever that document or form or whatever looks like, yeah, we have pretty much everything else that was needed.
So notice to proceed,
Yeah. that would work.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Bill McGee is here. Bill, the last that I remember, you were making a request for a loan of approximately $400,000 to develop your property on Williamsburg Street.
Right.
And at the last meeting, I think we told you that we don't have $400,000. So it's a pretty easy decision that we can't do it at this point. Is there anything you wanna add to that?
No, the only thing, the project I was talking about was the Market Road project that was started with the revitalization of the Williamsburg Street from Richland Avenue down the park, and that's been on hold. And I was, in order to keep my project going, I was trying to get a loan to start construction of 2 houses right directly across from the Farmers Market building, waiting for the city to finish and restart, I guess, the Williamsburg project, which would be the road going into the units that I had planned for the back. So my request was, I can start the 2 houses on the front without the city completing or starting the infrastructure in the back.
I don't think we've received a proposal for the 1 or 2 houses on the front for construction.
I
haven't seen it.
thought I did. I will go back and find out.
Was it 400,000 for 2 houses?
It was 440
Well, the
something.
400,000 was for the infrastructure in the back,
Well,
and you said you can't do that,
That's right.
so that, you know, I'm moving on, just doing the
To do-
construction of
to
the
do
2
the
houses
houses.
in the front, yes.
that,
How much are you talking about for those houses?
I don't have that, I don't have it with me, okay? But I can make sure that you, if I haven't sent it, I can send it to you.
If you
But I
can
thought I
resend it.
had.
I would suggest you have it broken down, 2 houses, and if you only get to build 1. But the other thing we need to do, and Jason, I know we're working on this, is figuring out our cash flow, because we have to check to see when this children's place is gonna be finished. We've got 3 properties over there that we've already got scheduled to do something with, so, you know, this is a cash flow issue, but with me, sometimes in business, if you can't get loans for 2, maybe you can get 1. So,
That would be fine, that would be
well,
fine.
we need to know that it should not be 400,000 if you're building less than.
No,
you-
$400,000 was for the infrastructure in the back.
But you own the land, right?
We owned the land, we paid you back the loan that we had for that project, yes.
The only thing you would really need to borrow is the hard cost to construct.
Right,
Don't put a developer fee in there, don't put profit, don't put any of that stuff in there. You put up the land, and we'll see if we have the cash flow to make a loan on 1 house. Because You made a loan on 2 houses and you were very successful. We want Williamsburg to move forward. But it's a matter of cash flow as far as Aiken Corporation.
Right.
Mr. McGee, the last proposal, sorry, my neck's muscles twitching, the last proposal that you sent was a total construction cost of $197,600 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2.5 bath, 1,800 square foot.
I thought that was what, yeah, that sounds right, yeah.
And the total request on that proposal was the 440, which was $243,000 of infrastructure work and $197 for the house.
Right.
So is that still the same proposal that you're gonna send?
I can modify it
Okay.
and reduce, take out the infrastructure in the back, okay?
That'll be
Because
okay.
I've talked to Stewart, and he says that there's a process that the city had used before where they can finance the infrastructure on development projects. And we're looking into that to see if we can't get it started that way.
So the question is, modify that and then we'll have to bring it back to committee but I also wanna know what the timing is on the children's place and what else we got on the table. Which Jason's done a good job as far as, pretty good job.
You gotta get it real tight. Yeah, because we're very interested in restoring that building at Children's Place and doing that development that we gave you about 3 years ago. So,
We're talking about 2 separate areas here though, but let's
Right.
get it down to one house and we'll see how cash flow works. I'm not saying we're gonna do it, I'm just saying
Understand.
we'll look at it to see if we can get it done, because I'd like to see us continue to move forward on Williamsburg. I mean, you've been successful.
you and I too, and I still don't know what's gonna happen to the other 3 houses on Williamsburg. The project really was for the whole 5 houses to be redone. But as you know, that you and we have been unable to get Ms. Page to do anything with her 3 houses there.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother issue, but,
What is the status with Children's Place? Have we gotten an update on their completion of the new building?
The last I heard, they were supposed to be finished by the end of the year. And if that happens, they'll be moving in early next year, and at some point, in early 2024.
There's a long delay between, potentially a long delay between completion and move-in because it has to be
They gotta fill it up, and then they gotta have the people.
inspections. And that can be as short as a month, or it could be 6 months, they don't know, cause that's bureaucratic. But that'll be a big piece of the timeline.
Yeah, I was told that I have this backwards, the younger children that come or the older children that come, one of the 2 will be significantly delayed of being able to move in.
Well, we can't move forward till we get the deed to it, so that's the short answer.
And Peggy's still in Norway, so we
Yeah.
don't really have a source of information right now.
Right.
I've talked to her a couple times, but I didn't ask her about all that.
How's
She's
she
got other-
doing?
She's doing okay. She's working on trying to get Rick's body back to the US, and that's harder than I would have guessed.
Okay, so my understanding is that you need my estimate on the construction costs of 1 unit on Williamsburg, right across the street, right across from the farmer's market building, and I will have that to you before the end of the week, so,
Okay.
okay?
we're not saying that's approved now.
I understand.
I saw they painted one of your houses you sold already. Painted it pink or salmon or
I
whatever.
did not paint it.
I like pink.
The roof and the house have been repainted, so,
Oh, the roof was too.
yeah.
Yeah.
They painted it pink.
Pink and gray.
How do they do that with DRB?
DOB doesn't do paint.
Exterior?
They do.
Yes, exterior, yes, they do.
It's on the
It's gotta
historic
follow
ballot.
the
There
color
may
of
be a
it.
pink on the historic ballot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pink is?
There may be,
Pink
because there are
holes.
some in the historic districts that are pink.
Alright.
That's a new wrinkle. We didn't used to do paint. back then.
It is new.
Yeah, that's more intrusive, but not my business anymore.
Well, pink may be intrusive too. I mean,
Pink is historically,
It's a subtle pink, let me put it that way.
Alright, now I'm gonna go.
Salmon.
It's a salmon.
Salmon,
What color is the roof?
gray.
Dark gray. So the city's gonna need to, change the name of the,
Yeah,
bungalow
that's
because
not
we
a
call it
squash
Squash.
color.
It's not squash anymore. We did not have the contract for the painting and repainting.
Okay, the
Thomas,
25
can I,
acre.
let me just ask a quick question. Do you guys ever issue conditional commitments? In other words, if we notice to proceed is issued, can we get a conditional without going the full month cycle? That's my question.
No.
Okay. I thought that was the answer.
But we will consider it.
Thank you.
25 acre tract, I will ask either Jason or Sam, who are both on the planning commission, to address that. There was a meeting this week that was postponed and I'm not
Yeah,
exactly
we,
sure where it stands.
Our chairperson, I don't know if you want me to say it, but our chairperson is on family vacation because the school's out. Jason had to run the meeting. Jason, you know, with the watchdogs out there, we felt we should recuse ourselves. That left only 3 members because one of our commissioners is in Israel and cannot get out. So that was put off until next month.
And the purpose of it was for the zoning change?
Zoning and conceptual
Concept.
concept.
So the proposed development is rezoning request for general business to plain residential. So that's one request. The second question is for the concept plan to be approved. The concept plan I do have with me, if anybody wants to look at it. And there's a memo in there. It's got 27 attached dwellings, and then a 15,000 square foot commercial space. At the front of the building, the remaining 25.3 acres is for future development. One condition that's listed in the packet for planning commission to discuss next month that potentially could have some negative comments from the public is the amount of space available or use for the commercial space is slightly over than what's allocated per guidelines. It's standard at 5% of the total acreage versus this request comes in at 6%, so it's not a substantial amount. I don't anticipate a ton of pushback, however, that easily can be changed, or my thoughts on that are totally off base, and the public comes out in droves, but, I spoke with Jason, Palmer, one of the partners in the development project. He understood, obviously, that, Sam and I needed to recuse ourselves, Ryan being out of town, and then obviously Charles Matthews being stuck in Israel, did not present himself for a quorum, so that's the reason why it was, pushed back, so. Again, they've got some additional pictures in there that they submitted for the concept plan, that those are preliminary, they're not set in stone, but I anticipate that it'll have positive feedback, so. That will push back till November 14th planning commission meeting, and then it will go to 2 meetings to city council, so you're looking at first of the year before they actually proceed with anything, so.
That's gonna require us to extend the contract.
That will require, Karen is currently in Canada, so I told Jason that I would present, kind of an overview of the project and update of why it did not go in front of planning commission. So I would suggest that we put either 30, 60, 90 to my time frame on there on the addendum. These guys have obviously gotten the grants to submit the concept plan, so they're money into the project now. I don't have any thoughts on whether these guys are gonna run or leave anything hanging. I anticipate them proceeding fairly quickly with, the development of at least the first phase of the project, so that would be my recommendation, to extend either up to a 90-day addendum to the real estate contract to allow them to get put to next month's planning commission meeting, and then obviously it's gonna go 2 readings, and I don't know with the holidays what the council's dates of meeting for, I'm assuming they don't meet the Thanksgiving week, maybe they do.
They do.
They do, okay. So it'll be first part of December, assuming it goes through, okay, with everything.
For the first week.
Okay.
Jason, is the 5% of the 25 acres is the per square foot of acreage? So they could put a 54,450 of that could be commercial. So what you're saying is the total acreage that they've got planned is 6%.
Yeah.
So really, all they have to do is reduce.
That's not gonna be, I don't anticipate planning it, I can't speak for all of them, obviously, but yeah, it's not an issue with me. I mean, you're gonna reduce it by 100 square feet, I mean, what's that?
Well, I
What's
guess,
built at 15,000 square feet, that's the case.
I guess my question is it the 15,000 square feet or is it the total acreage that that you're saying is for commercial? You understand my question? 5% of the 25 acres.
Yeah, they have additional acre or additional less of a square foot, it would work.
I mean, I've been through this a lot, so.
But there are some pictures, if anybody wants to pass it around, there's some kind of a facade looks of the apartments dwelling. So,
I like the looks of it personally, but, you know, maybe it changes. I have a copy.
Yes.
I wouldn't pass it.
If we perhaps need a motion to extend the contract by up to 90 days,
yeah, I don't even know if he's that long,
no
honestly.
longer than that.
Yeah, that'd be 60.
Yeah, you need to be specific in the motion, rather than.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I'm gonna leave it whoever makes the motion, I'm not gonna make the motion, just
Just do 60 days, and if that's all you think you need, they will need.
I can't anticipate any more than 60 by any.
Or make that motion, Bill?
I'll make a motion to extend the contract by 60 days so they can get to the planning commission meeting with a quorum.
Okay. Good, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll do that. Under new business, we were going to have a presentation from Joel Stewart. He got in contact with Jason and I about 10 days ago and said he was swamped with tax extensions or whatever. And he asked if he could postpone that until our next meeting, and we told him that would be acceptable, so. Anything that you want to add to that, Mr. Treasurer, Jason?
No, I think Tim brought up the question last time about how kind of the taxable benefits, consequences of transferring like real estate into lead versus acre corp and so forth. So he does plan to update us on that, as well as our P&L balance sheet. Again, I think with the project on the table or horizon, their services are gonna be even more so needed,
Right.
unless Joe's gonna write a check for me.
We can do that. Okay. Update on mixed use office building. There's not a lot I want to say about that. I have been back in contact with representatives from the lab. I've not had a chance to meet with them yet, however, I anticipate a meeting very shortly, to work forward with a contractor or lease arrangement, so I don't have any updates on that.
No MOU then?
I don't have anything yet,
No, nothing,
but
okay.
I'm gonna be meeting with them shortly, and we'll have hopefully more of a report, soon. I did get the tree survey back, this week. There are 23 trees on the property, and if anybody wants to look at it, it's about a 50-page report. I thought I'd have a 2-page report. So what exactly it means for development of that property, I don't know yet, but we have the survey, we do have it.
Do they put on there the grand significance?
They listed 23 trees, and they're mostly pecan or hackberries, is what I read out of it. I don't know if any of them.
Is, hackberry or pecan a significant tree? Good, okay.
Well, I mean, I think the grand is significant is more by the DBH rather than
I
the
got you.
species.
Okay.
But I think those aren't significant, I mean, those species aren't necessarily significant. So I think it would be maybe a consideration of what gets replanted there, those have to come down. But I saw that report too, Buzz, and it looked like, you know, they did rank them in order of priority. And it looks like a lot of them are on the perimeter of the lot, so that worked out well.
Okay. Is a pecan tree or a pecan tree, depending what part of the country you're from,
That's
is it on the list of approved trees for the city of Aiken?
That's a good question, I don't know that, because they're not great
You don't,
trees.
you don't plant them, on cardboard.
detail was in hands.
I think there was only one tree listed in good condition, the rest were fair or poor as well, so.
Well, there was a significant limb fell off of the one that we had to get that cleaned up.
One of the trees fell. I mean, it was
Leaning.
over, it was either a major part of the tree or.
It was the major part of the tree, yeah.
That may happen some more. Maybe some more fall.
Storm at night.
Anybody wanna see that?
Doesn't council need to approve the site that they're gonna use?
Yeah.
So if they, I looked at the last meeting, I was surprised to see that it wasn't brought up. I thought they wanted to move this process along.
I think they don't necessarily have to approve the site so much as more the disbursement of the money, and I think so they're kind of waiting for an agreement with the lab to be formalized before that's gonna happen.
The MOU you're talking about?
Essentially where it stands is and right now, Buzz is awaiting a proposal from the architects for design services, and the next consideration will be, okay, we have a commitment in place from the lab, and here's a proposal for moving forward. It'll all be incorporated together, kind of a phase 2. That will go before council.
Well, why would,
Architectural work.
I'm just, what's the logic of moving forward on a specific site if council hasn't approved it? It was my understanding that they had to approve the location.
It will. That'll be incorporated into the approvals for the next phase.
I think it's very, in connection to that, we don't need to spend another dime. First of all, we don't have a dime to start paying anybody else, so we can't, at least this committee or this, we're gonna be involved in this. We need a funding source as far as, before we go forward with architects. I mean, they're talking to you about a proposal, but I don't wanna pay these guys anything until we know we got a deal. I'm talking about not just a memorandum of understanding that has an out, okay? Before we start spending money for architects, we have to have the stamp saying this is the go, before we start spending money. I mean,
Well, that's a agree, I think everybody ought to agree on the location.
well, you're not gonna be spending any money unless we agree on the location. I mean, we've done what we're done.
I don't think the ball's in our court.
No, we've done what we're supposed to do as far as.
Well, that's my question, when is this, it was my understanding that we wanted to move this thing along pretty fast in order to accommodate this potential tenant. And so I was expecting council to approve our recommendation Monday night. And I looked at it on YouTube and it wasn't even addressed.
Well, those of us that were there, I was thinking the same thing, they were at least gonna,
So what is the plan? I mean, we're gonna do a lot of work and spend a lot of money, and then they decide, well, it's not really, too much opposition, we don't really like that.
There's no more money to be spent. It's all contingent on Buzz meeting with the lab and getting a commitment is the next step. It's in their court.
There's really 2 steps, Tim. Two
Okay.
things that have to get into place before we can do anything. One is some kind of agreement with the lab, whether it's a lease or a contract or something to where they're committed and we know what they can do. The second step is a written agreement between Aiken Corporation and the city as to where we go from here, the spending the money. That would include, I think, the location, all of those things would be spelled out. Those 2 both have to be in place before we can go forward.
Well, I understand that, it just, to me, it's logical that the location would have to be agreed to before you would take the next step. I just don't understand.
That would be part of our agreement with the city, would be the location
Well,
and the use of the money.
it's got to go in to, if we go non-binding memorandum of understanding, for us to at least, in that, it's got to show where we're gonna do it, okay? But we're not doing anything else until the lab says, yes, this is what we wanna do, and then that process starts it from the standpoint of getting the approval from everybody. The biggest issue that I see for the Aiken Corporation is that once the lab does move forward, what does that agreement look like with the city? I mean, I'll be honest, that's the complicated part as far. But you're absolutely right. We don't spend another dime until we know we've got a firm deal with the lab, that's the way I look at it. Now, you're right, the city, whoever controls the funds, has got to give the okay to say.
You're asking the lab to agree to something that hasn't even been, agreed to, hasn't been designated by the city.
Well, to some degree, this is almost like a private developer deal. The city, if we're looking at building a building for a tenant on a piece of land that we own, the city doesn't necessarily have to pre-approve that.
Well, I didn't understand that we were building the building, I thought the city was doing that.
That, I'll be honest with you, that has not been
Well,
decided yet, as far as
well,
I know.
Well, that, yeah.
Well, I go back to my original concern saying we need, what did you refer to it as, a timeline?
Critical.
Of steps that need to be taken, a logical list of steps that need to be taken. The thing keeps, I'm sitting here on the board and everything's going on and I just don't know, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. That's why, to me, the logical thing is the city asked us to come up with a recommendation, we did that. And then my understanding was the city was gonna have to approve it, so I thought the city would approve it. Then we go to the next step, getting architects to work on this particular site. We spent a lot of time on that site, the city may decide, well, we like the.
I was under the understanding that when we made that presentation, that they were gonna approve that site. But we were told that day prior that they were not going to. They just were gonna hear our presentation. So, like I said, the ball's not in our court.
Excuse me for not being able to fully understand.
I'm with you.
The point is, well, if some of us agree with what you're saying, it's not our call, we did what we were supposed to do. Now, none of this happens unless the lab says, yes, I wanna be on Newberry Street and we're willing to move forward. Now, the question comes in, is there a delay between memorandum of understanding with an out clause? Because in business, sometimes you have to work with the memorandum of understanding and have to fund certain things to be able to get to the signed lease, even on the Amentum building. We did not get a signed lease until 2 or 3 days, or maybe a couple of months or so before we actually could start paying an architect or whatever. So there was a lot of back and forth on that building because when they signed the lease, they're on the hook. And they were, until you have negotiations with the actual layout, do they like the building, and the city's gotta approve the building, we gotta approve the building, we're gonna be involved. But my point is, there may have to be some expenditures of some funds, minor funds, between the memorandum of understanding and when that lease is signed. Because the lease is gonna be signed by the Department of Energy, I believe. Is that correct? Or whoever, the lab, if it's a lab, so that concerns me a little bit about timeline. If it's the Department of Energy, if it's a lab, it's one thing, but you understand my question about when do you actually get the firm,
Well, if I was a GD, I would say, has the city approved the location? Well, no. Will you come back to me when the city
well,
approves the
no,
location?
I
We spend a lot of time when something hadn't been decided. It doesn't make
And
any
while we're
sense.
going through this timeline, should we send an RFQ for architects?
I got a proposal from McMillan this morning, so we have their proposal in hand. I haven't even looked at it yet, it just came in about 30 minutes before the meeting. So we do have that. Their timeline, just for what it's worth, is approximately 50 weeks from start to finish.
how many?
50, just short of a year.
That's about what I would expect.
Yeah.
But we're not moving forward with this. And as I say, there's 2 steps. One is to work out something in the lab, the second is to go back to the city. And does it work great with the city have to go before council, or is that something manager can?
You mean the location or the expenditure of
The whole
funds?
thing, I mean, the disbursement of money, the location, the whole concept.
I mean, at this point, when I talked to Gary Smith about a vote on location, he was saying, in court needs to send us exactly what you want us to vote on, because what's the mechanism by which council approves the site? Do we make a resolution? I mean, and I was in that meeting when you all presented, and I did expect council to have some discussion, and they went right into public comment, so I think they just weren't ready to have that linchpin. But I mean, that's something that we could bring up with them, if it's just a matter of them sending you a letter that, yes, we're good with this site, please proceed, or we need to figure out the mechanism by which this becomes official.
Yeah, we need to know that.
And as
that-
far as the council specifically considering anything, including a site, I think that their position, what I've heard from them, is, okay, we've spent money and Aiken Corporation has done a great job and there's been lots of effort and lots of public input. Now it is time for the lab to act and see that there is actually something to move forward with before they do anything else.
I feel like that is a linchpin of making sure that the lab is committed to being downtown, and I feel, my impression was that the recommendations that y'all presented were well received. But I understand that you want more of a firmer commitment than that. But I think at this point, making sure the lab is committed to being downtown is pretty much the city's next.
I have a good friend of mine that has worked out there many years, and I'm not gonna say who he was or anything. He told me, he said the lab doesn't make the decision of where they go. It's above them. So they have bureaucracy to have to go through. You know, I'm sure that, I'm hoping that member MOU is at those right people at this point.
Right.
They made it clear to me that they would accept whatever site we recommended. They were not gonna get into it, and whichever one that we came up with, they were gonna go with it. So I don't think it's an issue with them. They don't wanna be involved with it.
So do we have to, in order, do we have to get the MOU or the lease or some combination there before we have an agreement with the city, or can?
Yes, that
Okay,
is
so,
might be, I don't think I wanna go to the city before we have
and
something done.
Patrick is working on that?
That's a step, and I'll be meeting with them shortly.
And you're gonna identify the site within the MOU. Would you identify the site that you've recommended within that MOU? So that would all be part of the package, which I think would be, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what,
And essentially, looking at it's very important to council that public input in the public hearings be on the forefront here, but not to have 6 public hearings when you can have 2 or 1. So they want to get answers falling into place so that there's not a question of is there a commitment from the lab. The question of the site is kind of narrowed down with the recommendation, but some general ideas of the cost, thus the proposal that you've got in your hands, even the tree information that you received yesterday is helpful to them. They want to have as many answers bundled together to have a public hearing instead of having 8 public hearings.
Right.
Have 1 public hearing with some answers.
Makes sense.
Okay, the way I look at this then is this is now becoming, it's not a city project anymore, it's an Aiken Corporation project. And we will be going to the city just like any other developer would be going to the city.
That is a possibility. See,
Did the
that's
board
not.
realize that that was gonna be the case, that this was gonna be an Aiken Corporation project?
Tim, I think.
And can we legally accept $20 million to do it? The way with the $20 million was awarded to the city, is that gonna be able to be given to the Aiken Corporation to do it?
Well, the money won't be given, it's a
It's
draw.
not money that awarded to the city.
That's the way I understand it.
Well, I know that, I know they would do it as a project.
It's not given to us.
I don't think the final decision, has been made by the city or wherever it says, yes, the Aiken Corporation is going to do this, this, or this. What they asked us to do is to help them with this, with the picking out the site and getting through that process. That's the only thing we're signed on for. The city is not, as far as I know, the city has not said, yes, we want the Aiken Corporation.
That's correct.
That development agreement or management agreement is.
But in effect, that's what they're doing, they're saying, you go get the commitment from the thing, you get the MOU, you get the lease agreement, you bring it back to the city. I'm getting a yes from the assistant manager.
Well, no, I mean, I'm seeing what you're saying, but
Yeah.
those decisions have not been made yet as far as who's gonna handle what.
Well, as far as
I'm
bringing.
just looking at the effect of what they're asking us to do is that the Aiken Corporation is gonna be in charge of the project, not the city.
The pre-development portion, the contract that you have existing with the city does give the responsibility to the Aiken Corporation for handling those negotiations with the laboratory. So yes, that is in fact true.
But not necessarily.
Now, as far as Say what now?
What did you say, what document does?
The existing contract, the not to exceed $250,000 pre-development contract.
It says that, okay.
The Aiken Corporation is to do the due diligence, including getting an initial commitment from the laboratory. Now, I think what you're asking is that going forward, since it's on property that the Aiken Corporation owns, if that recommendation is accepted, but none of those decisions have been made. If it's on property owned by the city, there's one set of considerations. If it's on property owned by the Aiken Corporation, obviously there's another set of options, opportunities, obstacles, etc. None of those decisions have been made, and they'll have to be explored.
I didn't, that was in the contract that was approved prior, that we ratified after the fact.
The initial agreement was that the city would reimburse us up to $250,000 to do the architectural feasibility study and the negotiations with the lab. So, once we get something worked out tentatively with the lab, then our obligations are stopped. And then at that point, we've gotta go back with the city and decide together how we're gonna move forward. We're not committed to building it or not building it, or we're not committed to anything.
Okay, I either didn't look at it, didn't see it, or didn't have time to read it or whatever, but I didn't realize that that contract included the Aiken Corporation negotiating with the lab. I apologize.
That's
Well, I think this helped make it clear for everybody, and I think it's not our full-time job, right?
Huh?
This is not our full-time job, so.
It's gonna be somebody's full-time job, and we end up owning this darn thing, but I think that's a long way off. There is risk with this thing, just like there was risk with the Amentum building, but I was sitting there with a 10-year lease and knowing that we're gonna build up as much cash as we can if Amentum, well, Washington Group, URS, they should have put a blinking sign on the sucker because they changed it. There were so many buyouts on it. But the same thing, we gotta be real careful on this. I'm talking about the risk for the Aiken Corporation. The length of the lease, and they're gonna be over here 22 years this November. But the length of the guaranteed lease on this building, positive is, we had 3.8 million on the line on a loan with the city and then with Security Federal, okay, so, but the risk on this, the positive is, there's not gonna be any debt on it, hopefully, but the risk of having a vacant, it's 25,000 of leasable space, and this thing about the conference center is not a moneymaker, guys. I'm telling you, you do not make money on a conference center. So I always worry about it. We end up owning it. What's the cash flow coming out of the conference center? Okay? It's expense, but the conference center, as far as if it's a management agreement with us, it could be that we manage the 25,000 square foot building, which is exactly what we did on Momentum. The conference area could be owned and managed by the city with ADDA handling the management part of it. So there's a lot of moving parts on this ownership management type deal. I don't envision us owning this entire building. Maybe it'll work, maybe a management agreement could work, or a joint where we share in the NOI that the capital, part of the capital goes back to the city to help, they have to take the 20 million and make it a revolving, where the city controls it, we get paid to manage it. I understand how that works, but a lot of questions in my mind, Tim, about how the Aiken Corporation moves once the city says, yes, we want y'all. How does that, what's the structure of that? And it's gonna be complicated, the way I look at it. This other deal was fine. That 100-year lease on the land, we went out and it was our risk. If they moved out in 10 years and I was trying to figure out how to pay you, Security Federal, it was a matter of who else can I get in there? Do I have to spend money making it smaller? There's not too many people wanting to lease 18,000 square feet. There's even less people wanting to rent 25,000 square feet. You see what I'm saying? So there's risk here.
Yeah, and back then, we knew we were taking the risk. It was a community project, everybody's gonna pull together. If it was vacant, everybody was gonna work to find another tenant.
We would have had cash sitting there.
And I understood what went on every step of the way. But in this case, things are happening, and I didn't know that, I didn't know that, and I just feel like I'm going wine and sand. I wanna try to understand what the next step is, and the next step is something completely different than I thought it was gonna be. The next step being, city would approve the location. To me, that's a logical next step, but it looks like the city's saying, no, you come, this is gonna be the Aiken Corporation project, you come to us when you have all your ducks in a row, and we'll approve it just like we would for a developer. That's what it's boiling down to.
The way
This
I
will
look
be
at
the
it,
Aiken
too, is
Corporation.
they have hired the Aiken Corporation to take us to this level.
And that's,
where
and
it's
that's, right, but that's fine if the Aiken Corporation wants to do it. I think the whole board needs to understand that. And decide, yes, we will take on this project.
Yeah, I
I don't think we're there yet.
There will be no decision made unless the entire board knows about it and is in favor of it.
Mr. Chairman, and for everybody here, and I provided to you, I think last week or the week before, a document authored by Richard Pierce in 2002, which I think would be helpful to everybody. It was a review at that point of exactly how this deal over here with Amentum, kind of the stages it went through, where all of these questions went back and forth, and even well into the project, the idea of who would own what flipped a couple of times and changed until it settled on the 99-year lease. But it was very instructive for me, who I was in town at the time but not directly involved, to go back and read just how that project worked its way through the system. So we might want to get Sabina to share that with all the members.
Anybody wants to have a copy of it, it's only 150 pages.
I know.
But we got another
Richard Pierce did
contract
it, and everything took a lot of paper.
with the is our contract with the consultants over now? The 250,000?
Yes,
Okay. Is that money going back to the city?
I think we're still getting together, the city, they never gave it to us, the 250 you're talking about?
Yes.
We've spent it out of our money, that we've asked for reimbursement, so there's not anything to send back to us.
Okay, and the total thus far has been
We haven't, have we received
considerably
the
less
last
than
check?
250.
I don't think so.
I don't think we've received the last check.
Okay, good. So then we'll be going into another contract with Pasden Group.
Once we have an agreement with the city, but not until then.
Okay, that's good.
That's the one I just got.
Okay, and we're gonna talk about that as a board with that group, because I've got some concerns there that I'd like to address before we just agree to that contract. Okay, that's good, so I'm good. Okay, so now the plan is that we put something together with the lab that assures the city that the lab is reasonably interested in occupying 2 floors of this 3-story building that would be built on Newberry Street. And then, when that goes back to the city will approve that, which in effect approves the Newberry Street location.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay, I got it. Do you know what the next step would be?
No, so, so Stewart and I, all of us are still talking about the mechanisms, where we proceed from there and who's gonna handle what. So that's not been decided, and I believe that'll be a discussion that involves everybody here.
So I just wanna make sure that a lot of that gets decided, so that if we go to the lab and we say that we want them to occupy this building and all, and they say, yes, okay, we're not running around like a bunch of buffoons trying to figure out how to get it done. They know what the process is, and that they're not losing time. They've got to decide on their location. They've got to have confidence that we're gonna be able to deliver what they've agreed to.
And
So-
who that legal
so-
entity's gonna be, that they're making an agreement?
So the city council needs to know, y'all listen to me, please. City council needs to know in no uncertain terms, if we get an agreement with the thing, we can't have any foolishness. We've got to move forward deliberately
Absolutely.
and get this thing done right, okay? Does everybody understand that?
Yep. And
Okay, I think I understand what we're gonna be going forward.
so we're talking about the fact that it could be several different mechanisms to make it work. Should somebody be working on those various scenarios
Yes.
now?
Yeah,
instead of, and so that we choose
We need-
behind door number one, door number two,
We
and
need
door
to have
number
our
three.
ducks in a row. Once the lab commits to us, we need to perform.
Yeah.
And so all of those things have to be in place.
Guys,
And it can't be any fumbling, or, there's got to be some leadership exerted here, regardless of what the public says and all that stuff. We've got to decide and move this thing forward in a business-like manner. We're gonna look like a bunch of idiots. And I'm concerned when you've got elected officials that you're relying on to respond in order to perform in the way that you're supposed to. That is very dangerous territory. So that's why I'm trying to nail down exactly what council's gonna have to do, what we need to get done so that we look like we know what we're doing going forward. So you're exactly right. We need to find out, how's it gonna be financed? Can that money be funneled through the Aiken Corporation? The plutonium settlement funds, I don't know what the strings attached on that thing is.
But somebody just needs to be working on that piece of it very diligently.
Yes.
We need to know who the legal entity is that the lab's gonna make an agreement with.
That's right.
Well, remember, guys, we have Austin Pethy waiting on the sideline to advise us from a contractual standpoint how exactly what you're talking about will work. Now, we paid them something, but we told them to stop, because I was concerned about, we spent this money with attorney, and the lab says, I'm sorry, we just can't get this done. Well, excuse me, I don't like paying lawyers if I don't have an idea about what the hell's gonna happen. But that mechanism is there for us to, the reason why we wanted to make sure we had the more advisors from an accounting standpoint about the taxes on this thing. How is that? We got a lot of this, but it all stopped because of the lab. The lab was supposed to give us a memorandum of understanding 2 weeks ago, Monday, for the meeting. Okay, now he's gonna keep moving this thing forward, so we've got a lot of work to do. You're absolutely right, but the devil's in the details. And the other thing about it, who is in charge and how does it all work as far as how the disbursements are made with the 20 million, and who's in charge, how does that all work? The city, I don't think, has made a determination that we certainly don't think that the determination has been, we're gonna own this building. I just don't, I don't think that has been determined, and so we got a lot of work. You're absolutely right, we got a lot of work to do, but right now, nothing happens until the lab says yes.
So my question might be to Buzz, it might be to Pat, it might be to Mary, but could we at least work on outlines of scenarios? At least the outlines, you said we got a lot to fill in, but couldn't we at least begin so that we know what we know and we know what we don't know?
Yeah.
I agree with you, but couldn't we at least wait until the lab says at least a non-binding letter of intent, so whatever the decision is at DOE, it's not local.
I'm okay with getting that, I understand now the way the thing is shifting around, so I'm fine with that. I personally think you ought to have the location nailed down before you do that, but that's okay if we wanna go to them and
We
say
did.
that,
We have.
Yeah, but it's
in
city,
city
the city has got to approve it, so
Correct.
I would just think that would be something you'd want,
Yeah.
this is the location, the city's approved it. Will y'all accept this location?
Mechanisms.
Huh?
What are the three mechanisms?
Well, Pat was saying,
I think you can go 19 different ways.
yeah, I just stopped at 3.
Okay. I'm sitting here like, God, man, I got like a
I
lot
gotta
more than
keep it
3.
simple.
Okay. It's gonna, I'm okay with going forward with trying to get something from the lab satisfactory to city council that would allow them to approve the concept of building a building on that location.
But not.
And then,
But it's.
David's saying from that point on, we need to be thinking about what needs to be in place. Now, we're gonna be, and I wanna make sure that council is on board with that.
I will tell you this, that Pat has started crunching numbers and an idea of the actual, how the lease may be, I mean, those kind of things, haven't you?
Yeah, I got it.
I mean, so those kind of things are, but there's no sense in finalizing anything until we get an MOU.
The biggest issue I have with this is having the difference between, we got involved in this because we were successful with amendment, okay? We at least proved we could do that. But the whole thing about this is, that is on the tax books. It's on the tax books because we put it under lead. This building, we have to, if it's gonna be on the tax books or a fee in lieu of, we need to make sure how is that structured, okay? We knew we had to do it with lead, that's how we paid almost $800,000 back over 22 years and all the rest of it. That's the part I have trying to grapple with is, I'm not sure how we own this building with the risk involved and everything else. We have a 10-year lease over here. If we could get a 10-year lease and 2 5-year options on I wouldn't mind, but, you know, $20 million deal. Not different than a 3.8 million, which I know that I.
Exactly. Yes,
And this thing has a lot of moving parts. The city may decide that, guys, we're gonna own the building and move on and not put it on the tax books or get a fee in lieu of, they could decide that. I mean,
I don't think they will.
well,
Well, we're gonna be sitting in between two entities that are very sensitive to public opinion, DOE and city council. We're gonna be on very dangerous ground, and I just wanna make sure that we have the steps in place and the full agreement in writing by the entities that are involved. So that
sounds like a
we
plan.
can perform if they decide that they want the building, and that all of a sudden, we're not going and saying, oh, council's decided they didn't want this, or they don't want that, we can't do it, and we don't wanna be in a position where the lab comes to us and say, oh, DOE has changed their mind. So we've got to be very careful in how we do this and get the assurances, as much as we can as we go along. That's all I'm saying, and it looks like everything changes in front of my eyes, and that makes me very nervous.
I don't think anything has changed, Tim.
Yes, it has, yes, it has.
if there's any consolation.
We go to council and recommend the location, it's up to them to approve it. I asked him, I asked Stewart, who is going to approve the location? City council.
Right.
Okay. City council, this is where we think it ought to go.
If there's any
There's
consolation.
been no approval, no. Aiken Corporation needs to get this together and that together and come back and cancel just like somebody else. Now it's changing. It's not the city's project now, it's gonna be the Aiken Corporation project. That's fine. If we're all aware of that, we all agree to it, then if we're gonna do that, let's make sure that we have assurances from the city, we have assurances from the lab, and that we can perform once we agree that, yes, we're gonna get that building up, there's gonna be a timeline. If the lab really needs the space, and they wait for us to do it, and we can't do it, they're damaged, you know? This thing is $20 million. We playing here with something serious. So I just wanna make sure we got it all. And I think you and I appreciate your support, you do that, I'm sure Stewart.
I'm sorry for being late.
No, that's okay. You're probably glad you.
I was on a call about, setting up bond rating,
Even more money
for our water
expenses.
plant. It's even a more expensive project.
Just to wrap up, the consolation. Dan, how long did it take, USC Aiken on the, manufacturing technology building? Wasn't it 10 years to get it done?
Before my time.
Just to make you feel better,
And $15 million was added to the cost.
yeah.
30%, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's another thing, but anyway, that's a whole different thing.
And it was a whole different reason for the holdup.
That's right. Once I know we're responsible for the project, then I look at it through a different lens and I can deal with it. But I didn't know that until now.
Well,
I didn't know that until just this
my
week.
lens is, I'm not sure we are responsible for the
Well, that's
project,
what it-
because that's.
The way it's working is,
If the city is gonna be responsible in the eyes of the state who is providing the money, because they're the ones who received the money, we applied for it. We are trying to get some clarification on how it can be spent. My guess, the safest and probably cleanest cleanest way is to work out some agreement where the money is spent by the city for the project, as it's built. But again, that's gonna require, discussions with Aiken Corporation in terms of ultimate ownership and, so forth. There's no doubt you own the dirt, where the preferred spot is. In terms of ownership of the building and all that, that's gonna have to be worked out at a later date, but, and there's a number of options, that we could pursue, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. I think until we get that written commitment from the lab, some of these things, we need to go ahead and start having the discussions, but some of it is somewhat fluid, I guess, for lack of a better word.
I think that's.
Well, if Buzz goes to the lab and says, this is what we would like y'all to commit to, more or less, quote. And they say, well, does the city approve the location? And we say, no. Wouldn't that be something you'd want before you went to them? And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think, I think the best way to approve, I guess there's two ways to do it. One is certainly going ahead and, obligating that money for construction of a site at that location, I think would be the appropriate type of approval. So then the money could be available when needed for drawdowns or to make necessary payments for the planning and the construction.
Right. Well, if I was Buzz or whoever's going to go talk with the lab, I would want that approval already in place.
Yeah, well, I think.
Because you're gonna sit there with egg on your face, if they say, well, does the city approve all this? Well, no.
Yeah, and I think some of this, with council over the next couple of meetings, I think that is gonna come up. It's just a question of the date, sometime in October or November.
Well, it should have come up last Monday, is when it should have come up. Okay,
I mean,
I apologize to everybody that
I
I'm
think
so nervous
this is
about
a
all
good
this.
discussion.
I mean, that's, if y'all want me on the board, that's what you might put up with.
we want you on the board. KJ came up with these times, the dates, Stewart. He came up with those dates and I feel we met those dates. I was a little shocked when council just was gonna hear our thing and not say, good, we like that, but, so I feel the ball is in the city's court right now. Let us know so we can get this MOU. I mean, I think Tim is right, where they're gonna say, well, where's the location? We're saying, well, the city hadn't approved it yet.
I don't think they're gonna say that.
I may not, I may be overreacting.
I don't think so.
We've only got 1 or 2 more meetings till you have change.
That's my question.
Yeah.
That's the monkey in the room. I
What's
mean,
that?
when the change of the mayor leadership, happens,
That's another.
we throw another wrinkle into the globe.
Our mayor-elect that never comes to our council meetings now, that's where I'm.
Now, we got
Yeah.
Let's all sing kumbaya.
If you had any conversation.
I mean, at some level, she needs to, respectfully, we need to be
Stewart,
including her in these considerations.
So you don't anticipate any drastic change, of course?
At this point in time, I have no reason to believe that.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess so yes, answer, no.
Well,
And that sounded like a.
that's the short answer.
Yes,
Just to clarify, whoever usually controls the money, has a lot to do with how the building's built. Okay? I hear something that the city, through the state, so that's probably gonna be a big consideration, is that the construction of this would be funneled through who has the money, and they have the inspector set up. You have a firm contract for the building of this,
Agreed. Here's where I see this today, where we sit today at this meeting, is I do think the money would the city, because we're the ones it's the money that has been appropriated to the city of Aiken. It was not appropriated to Aiken Corporation or to the lab, it was to the city. So therefore, we're the ones that have the responsibility, I guess, to use, to kind of in the vernacular, you know, we birthed the baby, so we're gonna have to raise it. So, in my view, at this point in time, I think the best approach, from a good management, good government standpoint would be that the city, be the one to disperse funds whenever, necessary payments need to be made, whether it's to the Aiken Corporation or directly to a contractor or some other sort of vendor, it will be done that way. I don't envision a scenario where the city takes the $20 million and transfers it to, Aiken Corporation or to some other entity and says, okay, we want a building and, can't spend more than 20 million.
That's where I'm coming from.
I do not believe that is how this is gonna play out, where we sit today.
You need elected official oversight. I understand.
Absolutely. In my opinion, I believe that's the way it needs to be done.
So if we get the MOU or something that's satisfactory to council, what's the next step?
The MOU between the Aiken Corporation and the lab, then the next step would be, I believe we would go ahead and bring forward, some sort of budget amendment because the money is sitting in an account, but it's not in the city coffers yet, it's designated for us, as we did earlier this year when we brought down money for, to pay the bond off and the Fairfield Street Bridge. We will have to do a budget adjustment, which will be 2 public hearings, and then the money will then be in our coffers and available for the project almost immediately upon second
Okay.
reading.
Well, if we have some kind of written document with the lab, we're gonna need something with the city.
Absolutely, and I think that needs to,
So that we can perform.
and this is why today, that you made a recommendation, we need to, I think, begin formalizing and memorializing in writing some agreement on how we're gonna proceed with this project at that location.
Okay. Any other comments? Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, no doubt.
Appreciate your
I mean,
When you talked to me yesterday, you said we're going to bring up the lab, is that what you?
Yeah, this.
We got a lot of moving parts, we're gonna wait till we get some good discussion.
I appreciate your bearing with me.
No,
No,
you're saying the same thing, I'm just saying about how do we work through it. Let's go.
All right, I don't wanna lose a single vote, cause there's 10 of us voting people here, I need all 10 of you to amend the bylaws and consideration about the members that are on our memo. You all were sent clean copies of the new proposed bylaws and a red line copy. Nobody has looked at it. David's looked at it, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the red line copy, that
helps.
helps tremendously.
It's mostly little stuff, clean up stuff.
Yeah,
I don't
housekeeping.
know if there's anything major, y'all have any questions, those of you who looked at it? We've been working this with Tracy Green for
Tracy,
probably
yeah.
3 months, and we've made changes, and it's just basically just cleaning things up. So, any questions about that? Any comments?
I move we approve.
Okay.
Do you need a motion, Mike?
I do. Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? On favor of amending the bylaws and the articles of amendment, all say aye. Okay.
That's for lead too, correct?
yeah.
It is for that.
Okay.
That should be clarified.
Yes, it's Aiken Corp and lead.
Thank you for
Yeah.
Aiken Corp
That
and
was
that.
my next question.
Okay. Joe, nominating committee, you and Karen and Norman are the committee, and you're the only one.
2/3 of my committee are not here today. Karen's out of town,
maybe, some others as well, reached out to all of the current board members to see if there were any ones who might want to leave. And I think it's a very much a positive. Everyone, she made me aware, everyone she reached out to, the entire board members agreed to stay on for another term. So with that being the case, we only have 2 open positions to fill. We have been soliciting names. Karen had some names presented to her. Sabina has forwarded some names. And then I think Philip submitted a name. And then there were a couple that came, I think, from Gail Diggs or Leslie Price. And some of those we just received this morning, okay? One I received, I think, on Monday. The other one came in this morning. So I think there was a total maybe of 7, 8 names. I will tell you they have not been vetted. With Karen's schedule leaving town, I didn't know Norm would be out of town this week. So I'm gonna ask that we table this until maybe the next meeting in November, so we can study it. One of the qualifications in the bylaws require that a seated board member has to be a resident of the state of South Carolina. We've got some in there. I'm not saying that they're not, but I don't know that they are, okay? So rather than throw out names today that I'm not sure about and haven't been properly vetted, I would ask that we table it to a future meeting.
Second.
Now, I have copies of all these bios. Do you want them and take them with you and look them over, or do you just want to hold off?
Preference on that?
What was the question?
She'll give them to, she has copies of the bios
For the
on
board?
all the members that were submitted for possible seats.
I don't think it's appropriate to distribute those to the board. I think those need to go to the nominating committee, so if you guys can do your vetting and.
If you'll hold those, I have those that I received email.
Okay.
And some of them submitted, we asked that they submit a resume and a photo. Some of those came in without photos, and some of those would not be what I call resumes. It was more of a bio, here's what I do, but there was nothing in there that says, this is my residence address, my contact information, here's a little bit of history on myself, why I think I'm qualified. Some of it was just about, here's what I currently do. So I think we need to take the time to go back to some of those, get some more clarification, answer some questions, and then find out if they were nominated, would they be committed to serve?
Did they read the
And I just
rules, or did they
received
not
one
follow
again
instructions?
this morning from Gail.
Correct.
So since our bylaws, ask us to have an annual meeting, which is today, and elect officers and board members, I think we need a vote to continue it until the next meeting. The bylaws do not require it, but they require us to elect members and board members they don't require it at our annual meeting. They say that it's something that should be taken up at the annual meetings. So I don't think there's a problem with continuing it till the next meeting, and I think it should be. But I think it should be a vote.
For the officers too?
Officers too. Unless there's, I mean, that's up, I don't know whether y'all.
Yeah, I'd say we hold off on the whole thing.
Okay.
I would agree with that, and since it's coming from the nominating committee, I don't think we should require a second.
Does that put us in, this is a follow-up question, this is not my expertise, allow us to maintain positions? I'm just worried about check signing.
No, I think
We maintain
until
our
such
current
time as
roles
we
as officers.
elect new
Current
officers.
officer serves through the term of December 31st.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah, I'm still good.
it's January
You're stuck with it.
first.
Okay, so nominating committee's made a, no second is needed, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay. Treasurer's report, any questions? We have not yet, I don't think, received reimbursement submitted from with the city that we're working on.
And there's a reason why. We do not have a W-9 set up for the Aiken Corporation. It is set up for ADDA. So we have to have, in our finance or with the city, we have to have the Aiken Corporation set up as a business. And I talked to Jason about that. So, Jason, if you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, so to kind of reconfirm what Sabina's stating is that ADDA and Aiken Corporation were formed basically as, it was originally formed as ADDA. Aiken Corp kind of took over as the parent of that entity, the EIN number. So that EIN number has been established under Aiken Downtown Development Association for a number of years. And so when the accounting, finance department of the city is reimbursing or making payments back to that EIN number, it's being made back to the Aiken Downtown Development Association. So the contract for the reimbursement of the $250,000 was initially set up for the Aiken Corporation. We've all along moved funds from lead. So I think throw another wrinkle back to what Tim's kind of saying, we need to get kind of a lot of things buttoned up. Aiken Corp and lead are obviously totally separate entity, for-profit and non-profit. So that throws another wrinkle into the situation. We need to reimburse lead contracts with Aiken Corporation. So we'll fix that from an accounting standpoint. The issue that we need to resolve, and the only way I know how to resolve it, my recommendation back to Sabina would be that the contract that we have established as with the Aiken Corporation and the city of $250,000 needs to be somehow amended to either add Aiken Downtown Development Association so they can receive the reimbursement request funding and then funnel that money back into us, or we add potentially a long period of window of reimbursement, because there's no change in the EIN number for us or them in a timely manner because of nonprofit status and so forth at the state level. It's just, I mean, you're talking about 12, 18 months at minimum. I mean, we can apply for EIN number, but that ain't gonna do us any good when it comes to an accounting standpoint.
The Aiken Corporation doesn't have a tax ID?
We do, but it's also the same tax, and that's why the tax
It's
return.
the same as the.
I've been telling y'all that for years, that I think we needed to separate those entities. That I knew that at some point there was gonna be an
Yeah,
issue from a
exactly.
liability standpoint. Lead's got a totally separate EIN number, but it's a for-profit versus non-for-profit, and the contract initially with the city was through the Aiken
So
Corporation.
for Aiken Corp to get an EIN, it's not like it is for a for-profit?
Yeah.
We should probably get us started maybe.
There's a lot that goes along with that, yeah. I mean, you're talking about,
We should have gotten a letter designating us as a
we
nonprofit.
do from 1995.
And that letter has an EIN number on it.
It does.
And they use the same one as another entity that also is
That
registered.
entity's always fallen under, basically as a subsidiary
Hmm.
The two have never been disconnected since
since its
the
formation.
2020 plan.
Good
Yeah.
gosh.
I've been trying to bring that to y'all's attention for the last 3+ years, that, and no, this is obviously, she's like, well, I didn't do it, and you did not. My whole fear was from a liability standpoint of not separating, when they started having, I mean, I was the chair of the big,
Yeah.
the big Oktoberfest, it just took a lot of risk for the Aiken Corporation when we had no alcohol sales or revenue sales, and again,
That's
there's.
what sparked the insurance needs and all that.
Correct. And again, I think it's something that we need to put in front of Joel to kind of start looking into that process, because I mean, initially Jennifer told us probably 2-3 years ago when I brought this up again, that it was, back then, it was a 2-year process. I mean, it's,
No, it shouldn't be but a few months.
I don't disagree with that. I
Yeah.
told her that I was
Yeah, let's get
foolish.
Joel, let's get Joel on and get it.
But separating them, there's gonna have to be a lot of accounting work that needs to go along with that, because I mean, their tax returns for a number of years have been filed with Aiken Corp. Audits are filed with Aiken Corp. So it's not like it's that difficult, Tim. I'm just stating that all of us have full-time jobs.
Yeah, well,
I totally agree, that's gonna be a cost.
Get Joel to do it.
We have to get,
But it's
Yeah.
important enough, I think, that
I agree.
let's
get it done.
get some love.
Right now, as far as us getting the money, we have a plan about how we.
But that was my recommendation to Sabina, and I think Buzz may have been copied on that, but again, that's something that the city needs to be in favor of, because I mean, they were in a contract that was 6+ months ago, maybe even longer, 12, I don't know.
The contract with A Corporation, we have our own ID number, right?
Right, but that EIN number has always been established in the finance department of the city of Aiken as Aiken downtown development, they're not going to change that EIN number because it FOIA and all the legalities that come into play with that, it's
So we
just
need
not.
to get their agreement to do that.
Why don't we just assign the agreement to Led?
Can't.
Can't, it's a profit.
Because the city has a contract with the Aiken Corporation.
Right.
You'd be,
So they need to pay the Aiken Corporation.
we've gotta pay the Aiken Corporation.
We can't just assign the contract to Led?
Not
So
without.
we get the
You have to have
downtown,
it agreed to by the city.
if the downtown development group agrees to funnel, send it over to us, that's what we need?
The city doesn't
That's the
have.
cleanest way, I mean, from an accounting standpoint, I mean, you got the same EIN number for the same or two separate organizations, really. That contract is for the Aiken Corporation, so technically it would just be a
We just gotta hope they're gonna give it to us.
that's why I'm looking this way, I can't make that decision. I'm just telling you, that was, in my quick observation, that was the quickest way to make that work.
Let's get the tax ID number, that's the solution, let's get it as quick as we can.
Yeah, if you can get a tax ID number, then the payment just goes out to the contracted body, which is the Aiken Corporation. And then all the records are straight, and that needs to be done anyway. Any alteration of the contract, I don't know that the city manager has the power to make that kind of a revision. That would have to go back to council
Not
to
for
amend
that
it.
amount of money, no.
Right. So, I mean, the cleanest way is, let's see how long it takes to get an EIN, because if the Aiken Corp has one.
An EIN number is not, I mean, Joe and I could go back to our office and do that like that. It's getting the nonprofit status that's gonna allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And who is going to separate, are we gonna obtain the EIN number, or is Aiken Downtown Development? Aiken Downtown Development was initially established before Aiken Corporation.
Yeah, let's get one for Aiken Corporation.
And to make it most clear, the nonprofit or profit status of the EIN number does not matter as long as there is an EIN number from the city's accounting side to send the money to.
But we got to get it nonprofit, because they're gonna be looking for tax return on that EIN number.
Right.
And so get it, so Joe ought to be able to get that in a couple of months, I would think.
I agree with that.
So,
The problem
yeah.
with that is that the reimbursement of, I mean, we've gotta be careful, really careful now if we're gonna wait, let's just say 6 months, yeah, cash flow.
If we get the EIN, then can't the city go ahead and give us the check?
Absolutely.
Why don't we do that?
There's gotta be a lot more
Probably
conversations.
gotta talk with
Who's
Joel,
splitting.
to ask for Joel's oversight. and
Well,
advice.
Joel has basically stated he's not available until after the 15th of October too, so.
I have a question, and
Absolutely,
sorry.
I didn't anticipate this either.
That's okay, so sorry if I'm not understanding directly, but since we do share the same EIN, why, when they write the check, can it not just go directly to y'all? Because we are, this, see what I'm saying? So where it doesn't even have to funnel through us, because legally, it should be filed under Aiken Corp as our legal business name.
But then the records problem is that then there is a payment of, at this point, $148,000 to you.
So,
And anytime anybody FOIs it, they're like, why did you give Aiken Downtown Development $148,000? And you will spend the rest of your life, and in 20 years, people will not be able to figure out, I don't know why they got $148,000.
that's what I was just wondering. So on the EIN, like with the city, it says Aiken Downtown Development Association. Like that is the.
Internally with the finance department, it says that.
So our name is on there and it's not.
Not
Because,
Aiken.
okay, because sometimes, because.
Cause y'all have always gotten the funding technically from the annual, I don't know, what do we call it exactly, off the top of my head, is it a gift or appropriation or basically the $60,000 that Aiken Downtown Development Association has received for a number of years, maybe since its inception. That was how it was originally established in the finance department. So if they'd established it as the Aiken Corp / Aiken Downtown Development Association, it would have been probably.
If we didn't realize that lawyers and accountants rule the world, and we've just gotta conform to what they desire. Yes.
Well, Jason, why don't you and I get with Joel after his tax season and just figure out the best way to do this?
We could get this.
All right.
Okay, any other business? On the treasurer's report, you've got it looks a little low because of the reasons we just talked about. Other than that, questions?
So what they do make modern calculations.
I've got two of those.
Are we adjourned?
Oh, no, that was a great question.
Thanks, yeah, I'm sorry I was late, but
How are you?
How you doing, sir?
well, I think.
Lucky third person, he stole it in the last couple of days.
Yeah, so is there a